Welcome to another Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Pleased to join you again this week. Sean Bock going to be kind enough to join us for the whole show today. We're going to talk Hawkeye football, Hawkeye men's basketball, Hawkeye women's basketball. Oh, by the way, wrestling started for the women last week. The men start this week on Thursday as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, November 5th. So much to get to. Coming off a very successful postseason, now going into the conference postseason or postseasons for the women's field hockey team, women's soccer team, Hawkeye women's volleyball team having a good year for the first time in a handful of years. So coming off a very successful fall season for the Hawkeyes, now rolling right into the winter sports. Sean, my friend, as always, thank you for joining us. Great to see you again. Sean with 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports, Hawkeye beat writer. Sean, I'd take a pause and a breath for you because we just don't have time, but how you doing, my friend? You're covering recruiting, football, basketball. The world is your oyster, my friend. How you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm doing well, Dave. Can't complain. It's been definitely a busy last week or so. It's definitely ramped up in the past week with crossover season starting and with all these conference games too. You're writing the football preview, then you're writing the basketball preview. You got to watch like Western Illinois. You got to watch some of these smaller teams, and you're kind of like, man, what am I doing this for? Like what these? It's just a lot going on, a lot happening. I can't complain though. I get to talk about sports and do all that for a living. But yeah, it's a busy time, but hey, when you're playing meaningful football in November too, that's a pretty good deal. And when you have Ben McCollum as the head coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes and Jan Jensen with the Iowa women's basketball staff, it's a pretty exciting time to be covering Iowa athletics. So yeah, I can't complain.
The awesome thing, Sean, is we're just coming off the sports equinox last Monday, the four major professional sports leagues in North America, coming off a fantastic Game 7 World Series, our two favorite words in sports, Game 7. So we talk about that, but Sean, I want to get to basketball so quickly and so badly. And again, thanks for taking the time to join us today for the whole show. But we got to get to football. We almost have the excitement of basketball in Iowa City for the women and men, but we've got a number 6 ranked Oregon Ducks coming to Kinnick Stadium. 2:30 kick this Saturday afternoon from Kinnick Stadium on CBS national television. Of course, big noon kickoff, and Fox is going to precede that. So we've got two major networks covering the Hawkeye game, one for the tailgate, one for the game. Now, I say 6th ranked Oregon because in the CFP, the first rankings, which came out last night on Tuesday, Oregon is ranked 9th, and the Hawkeyes were ranked 20th. Now, in the AP poll, for the writers, the Hawks were receiving votes. They'd be 26th essentially. But in the coaches poll, they're ranked 24th. So a lot of good things going into this 6-2 overall, 4-1 for the Hawkeyes. Of course, Oregon is 4-1 in the conference and 7-1 overall. Sean, this could be a heck of a matchup. Now, 3 weeks ago, we were just hoping, man, I hope the Hawks can hang around with Penn State. Well, they end up beating Penn State in a close one. And of course, we know the seismic changes and shifts that have happened in Unhappy Valley, formerly Happy Valley. But now Oregon comes to town, and we know what a reputation Oregon brings. But Sean, we also, and I take time to set this up with you, this next comment or question from you, to you, we know what November brings for Kirk Ferentz and the Hawkeyes. I see you smiling off camera, so you know you're champing at the bit here. We know all the records in the last 15 years, last 5 years against conference opponents, at Kinnick overall, against ranked opponents, non-ranked opponents. But Sean, two Hawkeyes fans' favorite words: November football.
Yeah, especially with the way that the season has gone. I mean, you don't want to look back too much because you just don't want to look in the past. Like it doesn't really you can't do anything about it. That Iowa State game, like you would love to have that one back. That Indiana game, man, what happens if Mark Gronowski doesn't get hurt in the fourth quarter? I mean, heck, even if no pun intended, Jeremy Hecklinski goes in instead of Hank Brown, but that's one of those things that you can't change. But to be playing meaningful November football, I think that's something that Iowa fans have really. I mean, it's happened in the last couple of years. Don't get me wrong, but this team kind of just feels a little different. In fact, in the matter that okay, there's an offense. Like, I think that's one of the big differences. Like, there is an offense. This team defensively might not be as elite, I think, in terms of talent. But I mean, when you look at the stats, like the stats don't lie there. I think they're in the top 10 in scoring defense, rushing defense, and passing defense. I think one thing that you want to see in this game too is potentially two or three passing plays that can really open things up a little bit. We know that Iowa's going to want to run the football, and I think the weather conditions are really going to work in favor. It's looking like it's going to be a little cold and rainy on Saturday, so I think that's going to work in Iowa's favor. But, I mean, Oregon's strength is also running the football. Oregon's got a really good rushing attack and a really talented offensive line, mixed with the fact that they have a really explosive passing attack with Dante Moore. So it's one of those things where, they can kind of lull you to sleep with a couple runs, and then bang, like, beat you over the top or beat you, to the outside. And with a couple of guys that they have at their skill positions and their tight end too, who is seen as, I think his name is Kenyon Sadiq, is seen as the number one tight end in this year's upcoming NFL draft. So there's a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball for Oregon. And, I think we talk about Indiana and, how Iowa was able to really tame them. I think this Oregon game is a little bit more of an interesting matchup for Iowa just because of the rushing attack that they have. Yes, Indiana's got a good rushing attack too. Don't get me wrong. They were top 10 in the country when they came to Iowa City, but I just think this Oregon team is a little bit more explosive in terms of the skill players that they have and the speed that they have on the outside. Indiana's got good guys too, like on the outside with their speed and whatnot, but I think Oregon kind of is not that next level, but I think they're a little bit of a step above. And it's gonna be really fascinating to see how Phil Parker is able to counter that because we saw against Indiana, he was really getting blitz happy. He was sending the blitz at multiple occasions. Does he do that against Oregon? Does he take more risks against Oregon? I feel like you have to with this defense, with this Iowa defense, but I think Oregon is just so explosive, and if they hit on those right plays, it's going to be, tough sledding for Iowa. And I think some of the matchups too for Iowa don't favor as much as they did against Indiana.
John, a couple of great points, but one I want to pull out of that, which is, quarterback for Oregon, which you mentioned, they had a bye week going into this week, as did Iowa. And so Iowa beat Wisconsin. If you want to look at common opponents and recent common opponents, because we can talk about, like you said, the Hawks all time are 1-2 against Oregon. 1949, 1989, those first two games were played in Iowa City, and then in '94 that was played at Autzen Field in Oregon. So yeah, they're. I was going to say none of the players. Yeah, none of the players were alive when that happened. So that doesn't mean anything. But you look at recent history before the bye. Quarterback for Oregon is coming off a broken nose, but he's been clean bill of health. He's ready to go. He didn't play the whole game, so that affected the outcome. But Wisconsin was 21-7, where the Hawks hammered the Badgers 38-0. So you can look at common opponent recently. They're both coming off a bye. This should be an interesting one. But Sean, I look at this in special teams. When we talk Hawkeye defense and offense, we got to talk special teams. So hopefully Drew Stevens, Reese Dakin can continue and improve upon what they're doing. Of course, Caden Weegan, the return man of men, also running back, receiver. I still think he's going to throw the ball at some point in time, Sean, so he can get 5 different touchdowns besides rushing, catching, punt return, kick return. Heck, let's throw a touchdown in there to Gronowski on a reverse. But you look at Caden Weegan, if he can continue to do, or if it's possible to improve what he's doing. And this game will come down to that, as you mentioned, the little things. The Hawks, the least penalized team. The Hawks, some of the best special teams in the country. Those things are very important. So they're going to need all that and more. And this being a home game at Kinnick for the Hawks and all the national exposure looks like a pretty nice setup for the Hawks. So I'm feeling better about this, Sean, than I did 3 weeks ago. Let's be clear on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have every reason to be feeling a little bit better, especially with the way that Iowa has been playing the last couple of weeks. And I know Mark Gronowski's not fully healthy, but I think he is moving in a positive direction, and is really more optimistic with his health than he was a couple of weeks ago against Minnesota, Penn State, or Wisconsin, those types of teams. So that's a positive development. And I think too, the rushing attack for Iowa is coming into its own because Oregon really struggled, I thought, against Wisconsin's rushing attack in the first half. And that Wisconsin rushing attack, I think, was down to like their third or fourth running back too. So that's an area where I think Iowa was really going to look to exploit. And, they obviously have to win at the line of scrimmage because Oregon is a really talented defensive front. But then again, the linebackers for Oregon are a little bit spotty at times. That's one area that I think Iowa can really look to exploit in trying to get to that second level and, maybe confuse the Oregon linebackers a little bit or, have those offensive lines be able to get up to that second level and, open up those gaps for the Iowa rushing attack. But Yeah, it's gonna be a really fascinating matchup up and down the board. I right now I would lean Oregon a little bit, but I think the weather conditions are gonna work in a positive light in Iowa too. But what if Oregon tries to beat Iowa its own game? What if they try to run the ball down their throats and they have a little bit more potent, they have a definitely a more potent passing attack than Iowa does. But then again, it's gonna be come down to turnover margin too, maximizing possessions and taking advantage of all the possessions that you have.
Can't wait. Should be a fun one. Saturday at Kinnick, 2:30 kick on national TV, CBS. Number 6 or number 9, if you're looking at the CFP, the Oregon Ducks. And then the number 20, Hawkeyes, again, looking at the CFP. What a matchup this is going to be. And we'll talk all about it next week, all the end results. So, Sean, my friend, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We've got 2 segments left with you. Thank you again for joining us for the whole show. Your content is fantastic as always. So we're looking forward to talking Hawkeye men's basketball next. And then we'll close out talking Hawkeye women's basketball. Sean, we have meaningful games to talk about. They both have played a game now, and well, such as it is, meaningful games. But we're getting to much more meaningful games coming up. So, Sean, we'll come back, and Sean will join us for the next 2 segments. This is Hawkeye. I'm Dave O'Hara. He's Sean Bock. Sean, you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, let's do it, Dave.
I can't wait. Thank you. Let's do it indeed, my friend. He's Sean Bock. I'm Dave O'Hara. Sean, of course, beat writer for the Iowa Hawkeyes with 27 Sports and CBS Sports. I'm Dave O'Hara. This is Hawkeye. We'll be back with more in just a few moments.
Hawkeyed is brought to you by BettorEdge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on BettorEdge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kieski, BettorEdge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at bettoredge.com/Hawkeyed and get $10 to start winning more today. BettorEdge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeye. I'm Dave O'Hara. Sean Bock joining us again this week. Sean is the usual guest on this show throughout. Sean, of course, covers the Iowa Hawkeyes, beat writer for covering Iowa Hawkeyes for 27 Sports, CBS Sports. Sean, my friend, again, thank you for joining us for the whole show. We just covered football. Let's get to men's basketball. In the earlier segment at the beginning of the show, I talked about all the excitement and Hawkeye athletics going on. I want to start with a couple of things. It was you and a few other beat writers. I'll leave it to the general pool. I won't credit anybody specifically, but you've been putting this in my head for a while, and I saw it on social media. But could Ben McCollum be the Kirk Cignetti of college basketball or Big Ten basketball? So, of course, we know what Kirk Cignetti did at Indiana, coming to Indiana as the head coach last year out of James Madison. Now, similar story coming from Drake Ben McCollum in game 1. Not just year 1, Sean, game 1. But I must go to this question before I get to the game analysis and Ben McCollum. What was your reaction? What are your thoughts to the new student section being under the basket on the floor now at Carver Hawkeye Arena, as opposed to years and years and years, all we've talked about on this show and fans in general? You got to get the students closer to the floor. What are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts of the fan realignment?
I thought that was really cool. Like, it just felt like the energy in Carver Hawkeye yesterday, not just in the student section, but just around the arena. And Ben McCall mentioned it too after the game that it could have been a little bit better. But when was the last time that you heard like the student section chanting like the D defense, like stuff like that? Like, it just felt like the student section was in the game. And I thought that was really cool. And I think it's only going to get better too. Like, I just think the way that this team plays and the style that they play and just how like Ben McCollum is trying to bring everyone together and bring everyone along for the ride. I think that's a really cool thing, and I think that's going to drive even more or draw people even more people into Carver Hawkeye Arena. I'm not saying it's going to reach the level of the women's basketball, but there's going to be sellouts throughout the year. Like, it just feels like, I don't want to say a perfect storm because it's game 1, but it really just does feel like a perfect storm in terms of like everything just coming together and Ben McCollum being that lightning rod or that spark that Iowa basketball needs. Albeit it's year 1, I think they'll make the NCAA tournament. They should make the NCAA tournament. And we'll see. Like, it's still up in the air, and it's like I said, it's game 1, but it's hard not to get excited about what yesterday was like. It just felt like a totally different vibe in Carver Hawkeye. It was a really nice change of pace.
You mentioned the starting lineup in your opening statements in this segment here, and it was interesting to see. It was Banks, Maniau, Bennett Sturts and who led the way with all those guys in double figures with 19 points, but 15 first half points and kind of slowed down. And they joked post game that, gee, what happened, Bennett? You only played 35 minutes. Now it was a blowout, and he's used to playing, 39 minutes a game at Northwestern State, Division II, and at Drake. His minutes will increase as the year goes on, but it was Sturts, as we mentioned, Banks, Manyow, Howard, and then Cooper Koch. Fulgaris came off the bench, and you mentioned how that's going to be in flux, different lineups and that type of thing. But and Urich as a freshman played very well and played a lot of minutes last night. Some of the other, won't get into each and every player. We could be here forever. But one, and Brendan Housen, of course, with 10 points off the bench, with 7 free throws, but made a Caitlin Clark distance 3. I think we can expect that because we saw him do that at K-State last year. One thing I wanted to mention to you, too, that we talked about when you said offense. I think the unselfishness of this team, again, one game does not a season make. I'm not saying that. But, Sean, this team showed a connectivity. And I love that Ben McCollum has said this repeatedly, and he even said it at last night's postgame to Gary Dolphin and Bobby Hansen. Man, I'm just wondering how our offense is going to be because our defense is so tough in practice. And you've said this, you've documented it very clearly over your coverage, and you said it on this show. Practices are a war zone there for Iowa Hawkeye men's basketball. So a game has to be relief for some of these guys and the chance that they got to get some confidence and show an offense. But, Sean, I think unselfishness is the key phrase early on in this offense for Ben McCollum.
Yeah, and I think it's the whole Bobby Knight expression too, where he said that he made practices so hard that once he got into the games, it was kind of just like, "Well, this is nothing." And I think that's part of that too, but also like the attention to detail with everything in practice, and now you're just going out there and playing, and McCollum kind of did a couple of different things during those preseason exhibitions too, where some people are kind of freaking out about the score a little bit, but it's like he's doing all this for a reason. Like there's a reason for everything. There's intent for everything. Um, and that's kind of what they do. That's kind of how McCollum runs things. And it's gonna be really fat. I think that that game yesterday was just kind of the perfect way to start things out. Like obviously you got the win, but I just think the style of play where offense or defense leading to offense, creating live ball turnovers, getting steals, getting to passing lanes, getting deflections, like running up and down the floor, like flow of the offense. Like it's also really exciting to have a guard who is potentially going to be an NBA draft lottery or NBA lottery pick. That just, I mean, Bennett Stark, just the way he's able to control the tempo of the game, never seems to get too frazzled. He's able to change speeds really well and still be, incredibly productive. He's a really impressive player, and seeing it up close in person, like it's, you're kind of like, whoa, what? I mean, what does this guy really do? Like, he's not necessarily super explosive, but just his body control, just the way he's able to get to his spots and control the pace of the game. Like I said, just so impressive.
And Sean, he is a leader, a perfect leader
Yeah.
for that team, running Ben McCollum's offense, coming in as a senior leader, transferred in obviously from Drake after Northwest Missouri State, a champion through and through. Very similar to Mark Gronowski in being a leader and an all-time winner. Whatever level you're playing at, to be a winner is key, and those guys seem to want to follow him and should everywhere they go because, as you mentioned, he's got NBA lottery pick written all over him. Sean, let's close out with talking women's basketball. 2 down and 1 to go. You ready to roll, my friend?
Yeah, let's do it.
I can't wait. He is Sean Bock, beat writer covering the Iowa Hawkeyes for 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports. I'm Dave O'Hara. This is Hawkeye. Back with more in just a few moments.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman from Merschman Seeds. Substitutions cost you money. Why take their seconds when you can have our first choice? Here's Ben Paper to tell you more about Merschman Power Core Enlist Corn.
We are way ahead of Big Seed on this one. This corn has 4 different post-herbicide tolerances, multiple modes of action for above-ground pests, and it is some of the highest yielding corn genetics that are out on the market today.
If you're one of the many that got substituted on your corn hybrid last spring, contact your local Merschman Seeds dealer today and ask them about Power Core Enlist Corn. From Merschman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Sean Bock will join us momentarily on screen. Sean, of course, beat writer covering the Iowa Hawkeyes for 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports. Sean, my friend, as excited as we are for Hawkeye men's basketball, by the time this show airs, as we recorded on Wednesday afternoon, November 5th, the men will have played Western Illinois already. Friday night tip at Carver Hawkeye Arena, an early tip, 6 o'clock. And then the women, by the time I do this show next week, record another show, the women will have played Evansville at Carver Hawkeye Arena on Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock tip. Jan Jensen and her Hawkeye women's team, man, the excitement continues to roll in Iowa City. We talk about the men getting almost 10,000 fans to show up in the reconfigured Carver Hawkeye Arena with the student section near the floor now or on the floor. Now we've got the women to talk about and sellouts galore. We've got games upcoming. Sean, as good as we feel about the men's team and what a great start, and welcome to Iowa City and Hawkeye basketball, Ben McCollum and crew. But Jan Jensen, first game won into season 2 now after being an assistant for years with Lisa Bluter at Iowa. Here she is, second year at head. Sean, one basketball, all that talent. Pleasant problem to have for Coach Jan, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I mean I think Jan kind of tempered the expectations for a lot of people too to start this season. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh man, look at all the talent she has coming in." I know it's going to be tough to replace the girls that they lost, but they still have a lot of talent coming in, and they're excited about the group that they have. But it's going to take some time, and I think you saw that too with some of the girls who are some of the women who went in on Sat or on what game was that Monday? Yeah, Monday.
Yeah, Monday.
Sorry, my days are all mixed up.
I get
Um,
it.
I mean, we have such high expectations for someone like Addie Deal, but she just did not look fully comfortable in the role. I mean, 7 turnovers in 15 minutes, like that's gonna happen. Like I think a lot of people are kind of used to, okay, hey, Caitlin Clark, she's gonna be, Addie Deal is gonna be the next Caitlin Clark because she's gonna have that type of impact, and I think she's gonna be a really good player in the future for Iowa, but it's just going to take time. And I think that's one of the things that Jan has really preached throughout the year. And I mean, or throughout the offseason and preseason. But there's some big bright spots too. I mean, Ava Hyde and Hannah Stolke, they both look pretty dominant when they should have been. Chit Chat Right, I think, is, still adjusting to her role, but she's a pretty fun point guard to watch. Emily Rodriguez still getting used to the offense, still getting, used to what she's bringing to the table. But her versatility and just her strength too is just very, very, that's going to be something that's big down the line for this Iowa team. And, you want to see Taylor McKay probably knock down more shots and, be a little consistent there. Maybe see Taylor Stremelo be a little more confident with the ball in her hands because she's probably the backup point guard to Chichat right now. But like I said, it's going to take some time with this group. And, I think you saw that against Southern. Like it was a 35-point game, but you could tell that there was a little bit of flow that was off a little bit and just some things that, weren't necessarily right that they're still trying to figure out with this group.
And one of the senior leaders, or two of the senior leaders, Kylie Feuerbach, will be a steady hand and also an off guard. But then Hannah Stolke in the post, her and Hayden, the Twin Towers, brings us old timers back like me, Sean, to the Twin Tower days of Michael Payne and Greg Stokes at Iowa men's basketball in the 80s. But Ava Hayden coming into her second year now, what a finish to her freshman year she had. And, to your point about Addie Deal, yeah, expectations, let's temper that. Caitlin Clark, last I checked, and I think this is going to go out throughout history. She is one of one, Sean. Never has been, probably never will be one like Caitlin. Even in the WNBA, you can't compare other people to Caitlin. So we need to calm fans down on that right now about Addie Deal or even Velitsko, who's coming in next year. I mean, some of these great players Jan has coming in, Coach Jan Jensen, as you mentioned. But yeah, I'm focusing less on Addie Deal, although I'm excited for her and her potential. Yeah, let's never forget Caitlin Clark is one of one. But it's all the other talent. Layla Hayes, the 6'5 freshman center out of Alaska. That post position was Stolke and Hayden first and foremost. And then you fill in all the nice players around them with their abilities, as you mentioned, like Taylor McCabe, or we mentioned Kylie Feuerbach. There are so many good players. I'm probably going to go with 8, maybe 9 players total, 5 starters, and then 3 or 4 off the bench as they get into more meaningful games. Because after this Evansville game upcoming, they've got a lot of big games, Sean, before the turn of the year. 2 Big Ten games. They got to play UConn yet. They got to play Baylor yet, and the non-cons. So they're going to have to get right pretty quick. But it's fun to watch this team again with the connectivity, and it's good to see Ben McCollum's guys this way. But it's hard not to feel good about this team with Coach Jan and her great coaching staff and these players.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say it's going to be similar to last year where Iowa really started to figure out as the season progressed and went on. But I think it's going to be similar to that. I mean, those non-con games are going to be very, very interesting. I mean, I don't really see Iowa winning those games, but also then again, like, that's why you play those types of games. And the Big Ten is difficult this year too. The Big Ten is not going to be easy. There's some talent up and down the conference, but yeah, I mean now's the time to test your team because if there are teams that don't get as tested as much in the non-con play, and then once conference play comes around, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, like what is this? now you're getting that taste of it. And I think that's really important for this Iowa team, especially with all the youth that they have. I mean, you look up and down that roster, there are so many sophomore and freshmen who are getting, valuable minutes.
Folks, there he is, Sean Bock, Hawkeye beat writer for CBS Sports 24/7 Sports. Sean, it goes without saying, but I got to say it. Fantastic job. Your content is second to none. Thank you as always, my friend. Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for having me. It should be a fun next couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to it.
Amen. From your lips to God's ears, my friend. Go Hawks indeed. So for Sean Bock, I'm Dave O'Hara, and thanks to Greg Kajewski and James Siles at BettorEdge and BettorEdge.com, my production partners. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.